So let's just talk about method types in Python. So there are three types of methods in Python: instance method, class method, and static method. So first of all, let's just talk about the instance method. So suppose we have one class test. Now inside the class we have the constructor takes the self and a parameter value. Now here we can define one instance method like display. Now the instance method takes the self as the first parameter, and then here we can just print the self dot value. So the self indicates that this method requires an instance of the class, or we need one object to access this method, and the instance method can operate on this instance variable, and also it can operate on the class variable. So suppose we have one class variable x equal 10, so this instance method can access the instance variable, and also it can access the class variable. So that is our instance method. Let's now talk about the class method. So we can create one class method, so we have to use the decorator class method. So we have to use that decorator, then we can define our class method like method C. Now the class method first parameter takes CLS, and then it can take any number of parameters. Now the class method can only access the class variables. That means here we can only modify the class variable x. It cannot access the instance variables. So the class method is useful for operations that apply to all instances. Now to call the class method, we have to use the name of the class. So test dot method C, where in case of instance method we have to create one object, and then we can use the object and we can call the instance method display. And let's now talk about the static method. So to create the static method, we have to use the add static method decorator, and then here we can define the static method. Now the static method does not take the self or the CLS like the other method. So the static method do not operate on instance or the class variables. That means it cannot access the class variables or the instance variables. So it behaves more like one regular function. Now to call the static method, we use the class name dot and then the name of the method. So let's now create one class calculator. So let's just define the constructor. So it will take the value self dot value. So we're gonna initialize the value. So first of all, let's just create one instance method. So let's just define increment, because this is instance method. So first parameter will be self, and then it will take one number. So this method basically increase the self dot value with the number, and then it will return self dot value. So because this is one instance method, it can access the instance variables. Also, let's just create one class variable history, which will keep track of all the history. So whenever we increment the value, so push the transaction into this history. Because the history is one class variable, so to access this we have to use the class name calculator. So calculator dot history, and here we're gonna append the history. So we're gonna say added the number, and then result is print the result, which is self dot value. So that is the instance method. So let's now create one class method. So the class method will have the decorator class method, and then here we can define the method. So the class method get history. So because this is one class method, it will take CLS as the first parameter, and then it will basically going to return the history. So because the history is a class variable, so here we have to use CLS dot history. So this function will return the history of the transactions. Let's now define one static method. So the static method is just like a normal method. It cannot access the instance variables or the class variables. So this is a regular function. So here we have to use the decorator static method, and then here we can define that. So let's just create one simple add method. It will take the numbers a and b. So because this is one static method, it will not take the CLS or the self as the first parameter. And now as a simple function, it will just return the addition of the numbers. So here we are done with all of that. So here we have defined the instance method, which has the self as the first parameter. It can access both instance variables and also the class variables. Then we have the class method. To define the class method, we have to use the decorator class method, and then because this is one class method, it takes CLS as the first parameter, and then because this is one class method, it can only access the class variables and cannot access the instance variables. And then we have the static method. So we have to use the add static method decorator to create the static method. So the static method does not use the self or the CLS. It is one simple plain method which adds parameter and then return the result. Now let's just see how we can call all of these methods. So to call the instance method, we have to use one object. So let's just create one object. So we have to use the class calculator, and here we're gonna pass the initial value. So let's just pass the initial value as 10. That means, so whenever we create this object, the instance variable will be initialized with the value 10. Now we can use the object, so we can call the increment and we can increase by 5. So it will return the result. So let's just print this right here. So here we have the output 15. So let's now see how we can call class method. So to call the class method, we have to use the class name calculator dot get history. So this will basically return the history. So let's just print this right here. So here you can see, here is the history. We have added 5 and the result is 15. Similarly, also we can call the static method. So we have to use the class name dot the add, and here we can pass the numbers 1 and 2. So this will add the number and return the result. So let's just print this right here. So here we have the result 3. So this way we can define the instance method, we can define the class method and the static method in Python. So hope you understand the concept. See you in the next one. Take care.